The first thing David noticed wasn't the car itself. It was the way the headlights were flickering, the hazard lights casting a shaky glow against the wet asphalt. He had been walking home from his late shift at the factory, the kind of long, monotonous evening that made you question why you were even awake when he spotted her. She was sitting on the curb, knees pulled up to her chest, shivering in a thin jacket that did little against the March chill. Her backpack was slumped beside her. She looked younger than her years, maybe 16 or 17. The wind tugged at her hair, blowing strands across her face, but she didn't brush them away. She just stared at the street, frozen, like she didn't even notice the car slipping past inches from her. David didn't think. He just ran. "Hey, hey," he shouted as he sprinted across the wet road. The tires of a passing car screeched, horns blared, but David ignored it. He reached her just as a second car swerved dangerously close. Before she could react, he grabbed her arm and yanked her out of the way. She landed on the curb behind him, gasping, eyes wide with shock. David's heart was pounding in his chest. He barely registered the fact that he was soaked from the rain, that his knuckles were scraped from gripping the asphalt, that the world around them continued as if nothing had happened. All he knew was that she was safe. You saved me," she whispered, voice trembling. David shrugged, trying to catch his breath. Yeah, I guess I did." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was used to fading into the background, unnoticed, overlooked. The invisible man of the city streets, a homeless man with a son to feed and nowhere to go, whose kindness was rarely repaid with anything more than indifference. "My name's Emma," the girl said after a moment, her voice steadier now. I don't even know how to thank you." David shook his head. "You don't have to." But then he hesitated, noticing the tears streaking down her cheek. "You cold? You want to come somewhere warm for a minute?" She nodded. They walked silently to the bus stop, the rain soaking through David's jacket and shoes. He kept glancing at her, wondering how someone so young could carry so much fear, so much loneliness in her eyes. When the bus arrived, David didn't have the fare. He shook his head. "I'll walk with you. Don't want you alone." Emma hesitated. Then slowly she smiled. "Okay." They walked in silence until they reached a small diner on the corner. The neon sign flickered, casting a pink glow on the wet sidewalk. David pushed the door open and the warmth hit them instantly. The smell of fried eggs, bacon, coffee. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. He ordered 2 coffees and a slice of pie, watching Emma's eyes light up at the sight of the food. He could feel the weight of her gratitude, and something in him oshed. David's life had been nothing but struggle since his wife had died, leaving him alone with their 5-year-old son, Max. Nights spent on benches, days hunting for work that rarely came, meals skipped to make sure Max had something to eat. And yet, in this moment, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time: connection. "You don't have to sit here," Emma said softly after a while. "You have things to do, people to look after, I guess." David smiled faintly. "Not much. Just me and my kid. That's all I got, but it's enough." Emma's fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup, and then she looked up at him. You really risked your life for me." "Why?" He shrugged again. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because somebody did something like this for me once, and it mattered. Doesn't have to be big. Doesn't have to mean anything to anyone else." Emma nodded, her eyes shining with tears. She didn't bother hiding. She opened her backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made this for you." David frowned, confused. She handed it to him. Unfolding it, he saw a crudely drawn picture of himself, holding Emma's hand with a little boy playing nearby. Underneath in messy letters it said, "You are a hero, don't forget that." David blinked, his throat tightened. He had never felt like a hero. Heroes had homes, families, jobs that mattered, people who noticed them. Heroes weren't the guys who slept in alleyways and begged for spare change. And yet here was a stranger, a girl who didn't even know him, telling him he was one. "I thank you," he said, voice breaking. "Really, this means more than you know." Emma smiled again. "You saved me, that's more than enough, but I want to help somehow." David shook his head. "You don't need to do that. Just live your life, be safe. That's enough for me." They parted that evening under the flickering diner sign, the rain slowing to a drizzle. David watched her disappear down the street, a small figure in the dim city lights, and felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest. Weeks passed. Winter edged closer, and David kept trudging through his days with Max, searching for odd jobs, avoiding the bitter cold as best he could. He thought of Emma often, wondering if she was okay, if she'd told anyone about him, if she remembered him at all. Then one afternoon, everything changed. David was sitting on the steps of the community center, Max playing with a worn-out toy truck beside him when a car pulled up and stopped. The door opened and out stepped Emma. She looked older somehow, more confident, but the same warmth shone in her eyes. "I've been looking for you," she said, smiling brightly. "I wanted to thank you again properly this time." David's eyebrows furrowed. "Emma, what are you?" She held up a folder. "I started a fundraiser for you." "For Max." David froze. He stared at her. then at the neatly printed flyer she handed him. They explained that a local high school student had organized a campaign online, telling David's story and sharing the dangers he'd faced saving a stranger. Donations had poured in. There were enough to rent an apartment for a year, pay for groceries, even cover medical expenses if needed. David's hand shook. This is insane. You did this. Emma nodded. I couldn't just leave it at the diner. You saved my life and you barely asked for anything in return. That meant something to me, and I wanted to do the same for you. David's eyes filled. He swallowed hard, trying to steady himself. I don't know what to say. Nobody's ever done anything like this for me. Emma reached out, lightly touching his arm, then let us. Max deserves a warm bed. Dad deserves a break. You don't have to struggle alone anymore. For the first time in a long while, David believed it. He believed that kindness could come back around, that people could be selfless, that humanity wasn't always harsh or indifferent. He thought of Max asleep in the back seat and felt a tear roll down his cheek. They moved into a small apartment that week. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. Warmth radiated from the tiny kitchen as David cooked breakfast for Max. Emma sitting nearby, chatting about school and life. The city outside remained chaotic and loud, but inside that apartment, there was safety, comfort, and hope. David never imagined he would become someone else's hero. He never imagined that one act of courage, one split-second decision to save a stranger would ripple back into his life in such an extraordinary way. And yet here he was, living proof that selflessness mattered, that kindness was never wasted, and that even the most overlooked souls could change the world in ways they'd never expect. Months later, Emma graduated high school. She hugged David and Max tightly before leaving for college, tears and laughter mixing freely. Don't forget what I told you, she whispered. You're a hero, and heroes, they keep going no matter what. David watched her go, then turned to Max. The little boy smiled up at him. Clutching his toy truck, David felt a quiet pride swell in his chest. He had fought for the life of a stranger. And in doing so, he'd fought for his own future, too. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't about being strong. It's about caring when it's easier not to. About risking everything for someone else, and trusting that the world might just repay your faith in humanity in ways you never imagined. That night, as David tucked Max into bed, he whispered a promise to himself and to the universe. No matter how hard life got, he would keep choosing kindness. Because the world needed more people willing to save strangers, more hearts brave enough to believe in the goodness of others, and more heroes, hidden or not, ready to step forward when it mattered most.